Welcome to the SportsCapping.com podcast with free handicapping advice, odds insights, picks, and predictions to help you beat the sportsbook. And now your hosts, Jack Jones and Brandon Lee.
You're tuned into the weekly SportsCapping.com free pick podcast. It's your host, Jack Jones, back with Week 5 NFL and Week 6 college football free picks. Fellow handicapper Brandon Lee will be on in a second as we give out 6 free picks for this weekend. I just want to recap last week first. We went 3-3 last week. I went 1-2, lost on Rice in college football and the Eagles in the NFL. Eagles blew a 17-3 lead over the Titans in the second half, so that was a tough one to swallow. But I won my 6-point teaser on the Patriots and Texans. Brandon went 2-1. He lost on Utah in college, but got a blowout win on the Bears in the NFL. He also won his 10-point teaser on the Packers, Chargers, and Colts. Brandon's 10-2 the last 4 weeks on the podcast. I'm 8-4 the last 4 weeks. We're combined 19-9 this football season through 5 weeks. And we're also 105-63 and 6 over our last 32 football podcasts for 63% winners. Brandon, congrats on another winning week for you, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, and it's good to be back. 3-3 is not the best week, but if that's our, worst week going forward, I'll take it.
No doubt, and we were coming off 3 straight 5-1 weeks, so 3-3 is not the end of the world here, and we're going to try to do a little better for you guys this week. We're going to give out 2 free picks each in college football and the NFL. Also going to be giving out our favorite teaser bets for Week 5 NFL. Let's start with your free pick in college football for Saturday, Brandon.
All right, I'm going to take the Texas A&M Aggies -5 at home against the number 13 ranked Kentucky Wildcats. It doesn't happen often, but whenever you have a ranked team and a team ranked in the top 25 getting points against an unranked opponent, it's usually a pretty good sign to fade the team that's ranked. I couldn't agree more here. I not only think Texas A&M wins this matchup, but I think they do so in convincing fashion. The thing you have to keep in mind with the rankings this early in the season is the overall record is really what the voters are dialed in on. So while this is, while I think it's pretty clear to me that Texas A&M is one of the best 25 teams in the country, their 3-2 record has them on the outside looking in for the time being. The Aggies' only 2 losses this season have come against 2 of the best teams in the country in Clemson and Alabama. While they lost both of those contests, they were right there with Clemson in a 28-26 defeat at home, could have easily won that game. And while they lost by 18 points to Alabama, that's by far the best any team has looked against the Crimson Tide, who are the overwhelming favorites to win it all right now. I'm not the least bit concerned about the lackluster showing last week in a 7-point win over what looks like a bad Arkansas team in a game that they were favored by 19 points. That was just a brutal spot for Texas A&M. Off that emotional loss to Alabama and knowing they were going to have a ranked Kentucky team coming to town at home at night. So, not giving Arkansas your full attention is, not something that I'm worried about. I expect a much different Texas A&M team when they take the field here, and what I think is a statement game for this team against an undefeated opponent that's ranked, in the top 15 in the country. This would be their best win under head coach Jimbo Fisher in his first year. You also have to, factor in how difficult it is to play at Kyle Field in a primetime game like this. Those that follow the SEC closely, they consider it the 12th man. So an electric atmosphere, and that's just a very tough spot to play for any team in the country. No disrespect to this Kentucky team, who I don't think anyone envisioned to be 5-0 to start the season. But I just think the Wildcats are a bit overvalued right now. They've certainly benefited from playing 4 of their first 5 games at home. And while the road win over Florida was impressive, I just think they're going to have a tough time in this one. The biggest thing here is the matchup for me. Kentucky's offense is built around star running back Benny Snell. They come in ranked 118th in the country in passing at 153 yards per game. So without, Snell running the ball, this offense, I just don't know that they can, consistently get first downs. The Aggies are a team that I think are built to stop him. They rank 3rd in the country against the run. giving up just 80.6 yards per game. They held Clemson to 115 yards on the ground and only gave up 109 rushing yards to Alabama. I know Snell is a very good player, but if you can hold those two programs, under 120 yards rushing, I think that's saying something. Texas A&M also has one of, I think, the best defensive coordinators in college football, Mike Elko. I'm pretty confident that he's going to put together a game plan that's going to load the box and, do whatever he can to make sure Snell doesn't beat them and force them, Kentucky, to move the ball through the air, which I don't think they're capable of doing. And when with a team that can't throw the ball, it makes it very easy for blowouts to happen because they're not built to play from behind. And, Kentucky starting quarterback Terry Wilson hasn't thrown for more than 165 yards in a single game this season and has just 2 touchdowns to 5 interceptions on the year. To me, this smells blowout and a big-time win for the Aggies at home.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive rushing stats for Texas A&M's defense there, man. Definitely a great statistical breakdown there of why they should be able to stop Kentucky. I really like this Texas A&M team. Jimbo Fisher's wasting no time turning this program around, and should be sitting on a big game here with unbeaten Kentucky coming to town. I was a little concerned about the Arkansas loss, or Arkansas failed to cover, but not too much, just given the spot. So it's really hard to fade Kentucky right now. They've been undervalued all season, getting no respect. They're 3-0 SEC play with all 3 double-digit wins over Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. They're underdogs in 2 of those 3 games, basically a pick 'em in the other. Covered the spread by a combined 68.5 points. So that's how much undervalued they've been. This might be the week the Wildcats, catching less than a touchdown against Texas A&M, that they get exposed. I'm just not ready to step in front of them yet. These are 2 teams I'm very high on moving forward. I'm just going to root you in on this one, Brandon, but I love your statistical breakdown and definitely the ranking thing with, the ranked team being the underdog. I think that's usually a good bet as well, betting on the unranked favorite.
For sure. And, I'm not the only one that kind of thinks Kentucky is getting a little too much respect. There's maybe, I don't know the exact number of teams, but, they're 200-1 to win the national championship. And for a team that's 5-0 with a 3-0 conference record, that's saying a lot in my mind. So the books don't think this team is for real. This line makes me think the books don't think they're for real. So I'll take my chances.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the fact that it just seems like the last couple of weeks I've heard people, say that, they were going to get blown out by Mississippi State or blown out by South Carolina, and it just hasn't happened. So right. I just can't step in front of them yet. It's not like I think you're on the right side. I think the value is with Texas A&M here because Kentucky's undefeated. And they're going on the road here. This will be their toughest road test yet. So if they pass this test, man, I'll definitely believe it.
For sure. I put a lot of value in these home night games with teams that have a very strong fan base. I just think people don't understand how difficult it is to play well on the road in that type of environment. It's why LSU is so good at home at night. We saw how good Oregon played against Stanford in a game that you liked, the Cardinal there, and that was all home. The home field there. If this was a noon game and the line was maybe right around here, I probably wouldn't like it as much.
Yeah. I hope they look at Kentucky like a ranked opponent, because it's just Kentucky. I don't know if
that's true.
They're going to take them like if it was a different ranked team, but hopefully they do. I'm sure they will. Jimbo Fisher's first year, so he'll have them ready to go. So I'm going to root you in on that one. I'm not disagreeing at all. Just both 2 teams I like. I don't want to get involved in it. So
yeah, I like Kentucky quite a bit. I went against them a little earlier in the year, and I passed. And I like Mississippi State and that team, and I just couldn't pull the trigger. And I think it's also worth noting that I had some little small action on Arkansas last week, so that definitely wasn't a surprising result for me.
Yeah, for sure. That was a great spot to bet Arkansas there. Nice call on that one. All right, let's get on to my free pick this week. I'm going to go with Texas +8. Against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Tom Herman's the best underdog coach in the country. He's a remarkable 22-1 against the spread as an underdog. All games as a coach dating back to his time as an assistant with Iowa State and Ohio State, and also as his time as a head coach with Texas and Houston most recently. So Herman definitely has his best team at Texas this year. I was high on this team coming into the year, and I think after their loss to Maryland, a lot of people had doubts about this team, but they've rebounded nicely with 4 straight victories, including double-digit wins over both USC and TCU. Last week they were up 19-0 against Kansas State before letting off the gas. I think they were starting to look ahead to Oklahoma in the second half and got outscored 14-0, failed to cover, so they won 19-14. I think they're a little undervalued because that game was close, but really it wasn't. They held Kansas State to just 217 total yards, and the defense is the reason I think Texas can hang here. They're giving up just 19.8 points per game, 333 yards per game, 4.8 yards per play this season. Opposing quarterbacks only completing 55% against their defense. This will definitely be Kyler Murray's strongest test yet. I think Oklahoma comes in a little overvalued because they just scored 66 against Baylor last week, and that's what everybody sees. And it made them quickly forget that they just went to overtime the week before against Army as a 28.5-point favorite. Oklahoma has a terrible defense, giving up 30 points per game, 470 yards per game in Big 12 play against Baylor and Iowa State. Texas has a better offense than both those teams and should be able to score, match Oklahoma score for score if they have to. But Texas 5-0 against the spread the last 5 meetings. They've pretty much been a double-digit underdog in all 5. Oklahoma's won 3 of those, but all 3 came by exactly 5 points. Texas won outright as a double-digit dog twice and hung tough in the other 3 games. And I just think there's a ton of value getting Texas more than a touchdown underdog in the Red River rivalry this year. Best team they've had in a long time, and I think it's a statement game for them. I think they get over the hump here. I'm calling for the outright victory, but I'm going to take the points for some insurance here.
Yeah, 100% agreement here. This is 1B of picks that I would have put out on the podcast or for the podcast this week. So 1A was Texas A&M. This would have been, right there with it. It feels like deja vu. This is the same old story we keep seeing every year where Oklahoma is laying over a touchdown against Texas. And, they haven't covered any of those. And people just don't understand how hard it is to beat a rival by more than 7 points. And even more so when you're talking about a Texas team that's on the rise under Herman. And I'm with you here that I think they win this game outright. You touched on the lackluster win against Kansas State. We saw that from Texas earlier this season, when they built up a huge lead against Tulsa. I think they're up 21-0 at the half and ended up winning 28-7. That was right before they played USC in a big revenge spot. They came out and ruled the Trojans 37-14. They followed that up the next week with a 31-16 win over a very good TCU team. So the first half they've dominated in just about every game outside of Maryland. And, if people go back and look at that game, Texas had a 29-24 lead in the fourth quarter, and then they went 3 straight possessions to end the game with a turnover, trailing by just 5 points. That's definitely one they would like to have back. This is by far the best team Oklahoma has played to this point. I think you could argue that the best they've played so far outside of this would be Iowa State, and they were without their starting quarterback, and that was a dogfight till the end. I believe the Texas defense will be the difference in this one. I think their defense is the real deal, and you just can't ignore those ATS numbers for Herman as a dog.
Love when we're in complete agreement, especially when we both love it. So definitely might have to throw a few extra Benjis on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's
sprinkle a little on that money line.
You definitely sprinkle a little bit. 80% of your bet on the spread, 20% on the money line. I love it. Let's do NFL this week, Brandon. Hopefully we agree on both of these. Who you got this week?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers -3 at home against the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is the perfect time to buy low on the Steelers, who I feel should be laying a lot more than a field goal at home against the Falcons. Every year there's a team that just gets unlucky with the injury bug, and Atlanta is definitely that team to start out 2018. The Falcons lost two of their best defensive players to season-ending injuries in the same game, with free safety Keanu Neal and linebacker Deion Jones both going down in week 1. They've since lost starting strong safety Ricardo Allen and left guard Andy Levitri to season-ending injuries. And if that wasn't bad enough, defensive end Derek Shelby, defensive end Vic Beasley, corner Justin Bethel, and defensive tackle Grady Jarrett are all questionable to play this week. I know the Steeler defense has struggled, but they don't have to play great here, I think, for Pittsburgh to win by a field goal or by more than a field goal. Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers offense should have a field day against this Falcons defense, which has given up 70 points in their last 2 games. On top of that, looking at some head coaching stats here, Dan Quinn, since he took over in Atlanta, is 8-20 against the spread when facing a quarterback that is completing 61% or more of their attempts. You also have to keep in mind that this Atlanta offense, like a lot of the dome teams with Detroit and New Orleans, they're just not as good on the road as they are at home. The speed and everything that they built their team around is built for that dome stadium. So while they've scored 30-plus in each of their last 3 games, all 3 of those were at home. And why I hesitated to go against them up to this point. Their only road game was a week 1 matchup at Philadelphia, and the offense managed just 12 points and 299 total yards. Yeah, I'm not saying Pittsburgh's going to hold them to 12 points, but if they can just hold them around like 24, 27, I think that Steelers offense is going to score 30-plus here. And the other thing here that I think people are going to overlook is just how emotionally draining these last 2 losses have been for the Falcons. They lost in overtime to the Saints, giving up the game-tying touchdown in the final minutes. And then last week, they let Cincinnati go on a game-winning drive and score with 7 seconds to play for the Bengals to win by 1. And then we've talked about how tough a spot this is for Atlanta. Pittsburgh, off their ugly loss to the Ravens. Steelers are 13-5 against the spread under Mike Tomlin, off an upset loss as a home favorite. And if you go back even further, this Pittsburgh franchise is 15-3 against the spread in their last 18 home games, off an upset loss to a division opponent. I think the Steelers win here by double digits, and all we need is 4 points. So I like this one quite a bit.
Yeah, man, these are 2 similar teams, both a great offense who cannot stop anyone. It's no wonder that's the highest total of the season at 57.5 points. I still trust Pittsburgh's defense a little more. Atlanta has too many injuries on defense, can't stop anyone, and the Steelers are at home in need of a win here after their 1-2-1 start. So I see a big effort coming from them. Yeah, you mentioned the 12 points the Falcons scored in their only road game outdoors on grass. This will be on grass. You make a lot of key points here. The Falcons will get their points, but I just think the Steelers are more capable of getting a stop when they need one than Atlanta is, and that'll be the difference in this game. So I'm with you on the Steelers -3.
For sure. And the thing is like, the Pittsburgh's, the game against Baltimore. Baltimore has a really good defense.
Number 1 in the NFL.
Yeah, so it's just really hard to win on the road when you can't stop the other team unless you have, a special quarterback. And I like Matt Ryan, but I just don't think he's that.
Yeah, if the Steelers were coming off a win over the Ravens, I would actually not like them here. But
for sure,
they're gonna be pissed off over that one. So,
and a lot of there's just poor play. Where Atlanta, there's not a lot you can do when guys get hurt. That's the big difference here for me. So.
No, Atlanta's doing everything they can on offense, man. And you just can't stop anybody. So.
They've got to be emotionally drained.
That's a good point. You lose in the last seconds in each of the last 2 games, so it's hard to come back from that for sure. I'm going to go with the Lions +1 at home against the Packers this week. Lions are desperate for a win here too Sunday to save their season. They opened 1-3 with 2 road losses to San Francisco and Dallas by a combined 5 points. Could easily be 3-1 instead. Last time they were at home, they beat the Patriots 26-10 in a dominant effort. Their backs were against the wall after an 0-2 start in that game, and I think it's a similar spot here. Should put their best foot forward here against a division rival in the Packers coming to town this weekend. Green Bay, I think, fortunate to be 2-1-1. Had to erase a 17-point deficit to beat the Bears by 1 in Week 1 at home. They tied the Vikings at home in Week 2 with a bunch of missed field goals by the Vikings, and their win over the Bills last week at home, nothing to be proud of. Green Bay has benefited from an easy schedule, getting 3 of their first 4 games at home. Their lone road game, they lost 17-31 at Washington as 2.5-point favorites, and I'm shocked to see them as road favorite here again against the Lions. Aaron Rodgers still hobbled, and he could be without 2 of his top receivers in Randall Cobb and Geronimo Allison this week. And this team still clearly has a weak defense, giving up 31 to Washington, 29 to Minnesota, 23 to the Bears. So it's something that's plagued them for quite some time, this defense. And Lions have actually had the Packers' number in recent meetings. They've won 5 of the last 9 outright, and 3 of the 4 losses were by a touchdown or less. Matthew Stafford, primed for a big game here, I think. The Lions have a great offense this year. They're averaging 390 yards per game, 6.1 yards per play, and they've actually found a running game. They're averaging 4.6 yards per carry. Green Bay giving up 4.5 per carry, so they should have some success on the ground. But one key thing here for me is this Detroit defense is quietly ranked second in the NFL against the pass this year. They're giving up 172 passing yards per game. I think Matt Patricia will come up with a game plan to keep Aaron Rodgers in check this week. I think it's a big game for the Lions, and I think they get the job done.
I wish I could be in agreement here. This is, one where you look at the line and you just say Green Bay -1. The public is going to be all over it. And so that might be the only thing that keeps me from taking the Packers here. But I would definitely lean that way. The thing with the loss to Washington for Green Bay is it came after that ugly tie against the Vikings at home where they felt cheated basically because they had an interception that would have sealed the win, but was negated by a pretty questionable roughing the passer penalty.
It was more than questionable.
Yeah, and we saw Minnesota off that same game, that same tie where both teams felt like they should have won. They got routed at home by the Bills in their next game. So, to me, I give them a pass on that poor game against Washington. As for the Lions win over New England, that's an ideal situation for Detroit to pull off the upset. The players played their hearts out for their new head coach against his former team. The home crowd was electric, and on Sunday Night Football, Matt Patricia spent all those years going up against Brady in that New England offense. He clearly had an excellent game plan for stopping Gronkowski, and that's really all you had to do at that point with what New England had to work with offensively. That's their only win on the season. While they lost by 3 to San Francisco, they trailed by 17 in the fourth quarter. They could have won at Dallas, but that's nothing to be excited about in my mind. Dallas hasn't been any good. They gave up 414 yards to a Cowboys team that had only gained 303 yards. And the most they gained up to that in any game was 303 yards. So, and then you talk about the loss to the Jets at home. People, I think, kind of give them a pass because they think New York knew their plays or something. But, that may have been the case. But the Jets are like 0-3 since then, and they've scored 41 points in their 3 losses, and they had 48 against Detroit. You kind of touched about the Lions defense. They're giving up 6 yards a play. That's just not going to cut it against a lot of teams. Detroit's 5-10 straight up against the Packers with Matthew Stafford, and 2 of those wins came last year with Rodgers on the sideline. Green Bay's 13-3 with Rodgers under center against Detroit. In a game where I think we typically see Green Bay as, a 3 to 3.5 point road favorite against the Lions, we're getting them at basically a pick 'em. I have a really tough time going with Detroit in this one.
Yeah, I understand, man. Yeah, they've definitely been a lot better with Rodgers. I know some of the wins Detroit's had have been without Rodgers, but this is just a spot for me that I'm not even high on this Lions team, but I know they're going to be all in for this game with their 1-3 start. So I know I'm going to get whatever they have. They're going to be laying it on the field on Sunday, especially against a division rival after that start. So it's more of a motivation thing, and I'm not quite sure Rodgers is still 100%. And this Detroit defense has been pretty good against the pass, but terrible against the run, which kind of doesn't really hurt them here against the Packers.
For sure. You say terrible. I think they're giving up like 65% completion rate, but The odds makers definitely agree with you here. I mean, that's all I can say is they are begging for the public to take Green Bay. So it's one of those games where I will probably have a little action on the Packers, but it probably wouldn't make a premium play.
Cool, man. Yeah, no problem there. No problem there. We can't agree on them all. So we're going to get to our NFL teasers here in a minute. Our free picks have been on fire, but our premium picks have been just as good. Brandon, let the listeners know how you've been doing and where they can find you to sign up.
For sure, yeah. Scorching 8-1 last 9 and 12-2 last 14 in the NFL, improving to 65% over my last 74 NFL picks. Currently the number 5 ranked NFL capper for 2018. Already got 2 top 10 finishes under my belt. Also riding a 56% run over my last 178 in college football. You can find me at sportscapping.com/Brandon-Lee.html, or you can just go over to the Sports Capping homepage and scroll down and find the NFL leaderboard and just click on my name there.
Hot, man. Awesome work in the NFL. You've always torn it up in the NFL on this podcast too. So good work, both as well, but especially in the NFL. And I've gone 26-10 the last 11 days on all premium plays, so I'm hot as well. 9-3 in the NFL the last 2 weeks. Last 3 Saturdays in college football, 17-4. So just killing it on the weekends. 170, 111. Football run since the start of the 2017 season. Has my $1,000 per game bettors up over 47,000. So been having a nice couple year run here on the gridiron too. So yeah, me and Brandon both. So you can find me at sportscapping.com or visit my website at betfirm.com. Either way, you can find me on those two or hit me up on Twitter at betfirmsjack. All right, Brandon, let's give the listeners our 2 NFL teaser winners. We went 2-0 this last week. Let's repeat here. Go ahead with yours.
Yeah, I'm going to do another 3-team 10-pointer. I'm going to take 2 of the games we talked about. I'm going to tease Green Bay from -1 to +9. And I'm going to take the Steelers from -3 to +7. And then I'm going to take another home team that I think has a very good chance at winning in the Chiefs from -3 to +7.
Yeah, obviously don't love the first one with the Packers since I took the Lions, but because they did lose by 14 to the Redskins, but honestly it should be a 1-score game in Detroit's favor if I had to guess, and the Chiefs and the Steelers won't lose by more than a touchdown at home, so do not disagree with this one.
Yeah, how about the teaser we were on both sides last week actually went to overtime?
Yeah, baby, right in the middle. I had the Texans +7.5, and Brandon had the Colts +8.5, and we said good chance decided by less than a touchdown. And, I had the Texans.
It should have been a tie.
It should have been, yeah, if they didn't go for it on 4th down for sure. But I was sweating that one with bullets because Houston was up 18, and I'm like, this is over. And then all of a sudden it goes into overtime. So I
was sick because the Colts gave them 14 points at least.
They did.
Turnovers.
They did. It probably worked out how it should have. Yeah. I'm going to take a 6-pointer on the Panthers -1 at home against the Giants and the Rams -1 at the Seahawks. Panthers are coming off their bye. Should win at home over the Giants, and the Rams can't be stopped right now. I just don't know how the Seahawks are going to stop their offense without Earl Thomas now. Plus, the Rams have extra rest playing last Thursday, so they just got to win this game to cover.
I don't know how the Seattle offensive line is going to stop Darnold and Sue. Russell Wilson may, I don't know if he makes it out of that game. He's going to have to be, he will be scrambling for his life. And, he's one guy that can make plays. But, that is going to be a rough Monday morning for him.
No doubt about that, dude. Yeah, offense and defense, both dynamite for the Rams right now. It's been fun to watch. Same with your Chiefs, man. They've been, at least their offense has been awesome.
Showtime.
That left-handed pass on Monday Night Football was one of the best things I've ever seen.
There's a throw every week that I'm left shaking my head like, what did I just see? So, and that's coming from a guy that's, watched Elvis Gerbach and Alex Smith and Tyler Palco and all these, great quarterbacks that have, been with the Chiefs here of late.
You guys should have like a Browns jersey where you have all the former Chiefs quarterbacks.
Yeah. Alex, I didn't hate Alex Smith.
Smith was good.
He was very painful to watch when, there's just so many throws you watch Mahomes make where Smith would have just curled up in a ball and took a sack.
No doubt about it. He's way more athletic than he gets credit for. He makes plays, man. So enjoy that ride with the Chiefs this year, bud. That's going to be it for this week's episode. Subscribe to us on iTunes, and please feel free to leave a review. Make sure to tune in next week for Week 6 NFL and Week 7 college football free pick winners.
Thanks for listening to the SportsCapping.com podcast. For more free picks and predictions, be sure to visit us at SportsCapping.com.